The Bob Murphy Show, episode 346.
There's a tidal wave coming. What you gonna do?
Get ready for another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. It's your source for commentary and interviews conducted by a Christian and economist. Now here's your host, Bob Murphy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bob Murphy Show. This is a special episode. They're all special. This one is special for the following reason. It is the beginning of a series of crossover events that I'm doing with Adam Haman. All right, so he has his own podcast. He's got a Substack called Haman Nature, and we decided, it was his idea, but I agreed, that it made sense, that we're going to periodically have these joint crossover episodes just to discuss whatever's been on our mind, whatever's of relevance to an Austro-libertarian audience. And it'll, I think, be more fruitful to occasionally have him on so that we can have a conversational format, as opposed to me just doing straight interviews of people or my solo episodes where I'm just pontificating for 50 minutes or whatever it is. I think if Adam and I have this periodic crossover event where we jointly discuss issues, we both agree that will be a good way to bring the information to you folks in a more pleasant fashion. In case you don't know who he is, Adam is a professional poker player, and I got to know him well. He and his wife were frequent guests on the Contra cruise that I did with Tom Woods for several years there. And so that's how we really got to know Adam well, and very interesting guy. And I like it that he has a lot of the same background as I do, but yet we often come to different conclusions on these matters. And so I think just hearing us talk about stuff will really benefit you, the listener. This first episode on this format, we are going to be talking about the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, its spicy tweets, and then the thing that got two FBI agents to recently go visit Jeremy Kauffman. So Adam and I had originally done our own independent commentary on this event and this broader phenomenon. And again, we shared some basic things, but also we had different conclusions. And we think just listen to this conversation will help you sort out your own thoughts. So without further ado, here is my inaugural crossover extravaganza with Adam Haman.
Hello, Bob Murphy. How you doing?
Hello, Adam Haman. I am doing well. How are you?
I am fabulous. Let's fight.
Let's do it.
So, any federal agents?
We're both agreeing on the front end to do this. It's not coercive.
That's right. It's not
like if two
violence.
prize fighters
It is violence, but it's not yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's arguably force, but certainly not aggression.
So the issue at hand is the internet, the libertarian corner of the internet, lit up with all manner of argument and emotion about what Jeremy Kauffman did, presumably with the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's Twitter account. And then when he recorded that 3-minute encounter with the presumably agents of the federal government, the FBI, in the aftermath. And I said some things on my Substack, hamannature.substack.com, and you got into a bunch of fights on Twitter and made an episode of the Bob Murphy Show about the encounter and your opinions on it. So there's some things we agree about. There's some things we disagree about. I think there's a lot we can talk about here.
Yeah. I think this is a great topic for us to dive into, just because, we're close enough. Like we have enough shared values and strategic insights and whatnot that we can speak to each other, but we're not just coming up with the same answer. So I think this will be good, helpful, whether the listeners end up agreeing with me or you or somewhere in the middle. I think this will be useful for them to, we'll do some of the thinking for them, not so we give them the answer, but just to save them time so they can take the process further.
We're here to help, folks. Here to help.
So maybe we can start with. I think everybody should read your Substack just to get that framework. But I think just as the context, this Twitter account, or X, as they call it, for the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, they've had some pretty spicy tweets.
Yes, they
mildly.
have. Yes, they have.
And so I don't know. Maybe should we just read a couple, just like people understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think they've said some wonderful things too, but they've also gotten a lot of attention and drawn some fire for some things I don't endorse. Yeah, I mean, they've said some very nice pro-liberty stuff in a very articulate manner, but they've also said some nasty stuff that I certainly don't endorse.
Yeah, and I should probably say, because some people do occasionally just ask me point blank, like, Bob, why do you even talk to that Jeremy Kaufman guy? He's such a big, and it's because I get the sense that this is like he's putting on a show, kind of like you could imagine if you hung out with Alex Jones and went bowling with him or something, like he could just be normal for an hour if he wanted to. That he, that he appreciates, like, I understand how this might come up, so I'm not going to talk about shape-shifting lizard people when we're getting the shoe size from the guy behind the counter at the bowling alley, right? So likewise with Jeremy, his family seems perfectly pleasant. And so I think, and when he wants to talk with me about econ stuff, I still think he's wrong usually when he's disagreeing with me, but we can have a civil conversation. So that's partly why I don't think he actually even believes necessarily in some of the stuff he's saying. I think it's more like, hey, it's a publicity stunt. I think that's what it may be. And that's partly why I engage.
I think part of it is a publicity stunt. And there's also some things that he thinks about the world that maybe I agree with, maybe I disagree with. But if someone were to ask me, you should cut this guy out of your life because he thinks a thing, that's not my nature. I don't do that. He has a lot of wonderful qualities, and I don't think you get the most out of humanity by just excising people out of your orbit for any particular thing they think.
So here, just so people, because again, and I'm not doing this to be shocking or something, or to say, look at how bad but I think, Adam, the listeners, if they're not familiar with, they need to know what we mean. And I don't mean, because look how bad it is. I just mean, I mean it either way. Like, you might be thinking it's worse than it is. And so that I think we need to. Oh,
I agree. It will underscore a future point I'm going to make too. So by all means.
All the better. Okay. So this is from the Wikipedia entry on the LP of New Hampshire's, the party. And then it's talking about their Twitter handle. So let's see. On June 7th, 2021, they tweeted out, legalize child labor. Children will learn more on a job site than in public school. Okay, so just for what it's worth, that one, I think that's fine. Because I agree with it, and it's not, I don't think it's saying anything reprehensible, and it's intentionally provocative, but I think in a good way. Like, it draws it, just kind of like Walter Block's defending the undefendable. Right. And again, I disagreed with some, I actually wrote a chapter or a paper critiquing his chapter on the counterfeiter. But the point is, I get the strategy, so people understand. I'm not saying here, hey, everyone will come off as Mr. Rogers, or let's just keep our head down and not draw attention to ourselves, and we'll just coast along, and maybe the feds will leave us alone. That's not what I'm saying. But so here I get there, but then and Gary Johnson got mad about that one, and I think Johnson was being kind of toolish for that. But let's see. On Martin Luther King Day, the account claimed that black people are, quote, in debt to the United States because they, quote, receive special federal funding due to race and are first in line for every college and every job. In August and September 2022, the party tweeted a number of anti-Semitic remarks, including, quote, $6 million minimum wage or you're anti-Semitic. Okay, so by the way, I'm not saying that statement is itself anti-Semitic, right? When I was reading that was the Wikipedia entry. So I'm not saying, and that's kind of the stuff with a lot of their edgelord stuff. Like here's one. So Nina Turner is a black, I think she's a former state something, like congresswoman or something. And she's pretty big on Twitter, and she's very much about like reparations and stuff like that. And so on July 18th, I guess this must be, I don't know what year this was. It doesn't say, that they tweeted out Nina Turner. So Nina Turner had advocated for free insulin in medicine, like meaning the government should pay for it. Obviously, it wasn't literally free. And then they tweeted, Nina Turner picking crops should be free. And so then Turner predictably went, "What? This is racist and anti-black." And then they said 2 follow-up tweets where they said, quote, "Insulin should be free," like in quotation marks, quoting her, "is equally offensive as calling for someone to be compelled to pick crops," and asserted that Turner should pick crops as reparations for the rights she violated as a politician. Okay, so stuff like that there. Okay, and then I'll do one more, and then we'll get into the one, Adam, that's the subject of tonight's discussion. As a 4th anniversary of John McCain's death, the party's Twitter account posted a picture of his daughter Megan crying at his funeral with the caption, "Happy Holidays." Okay, and then people freaked out, including Justin Amash, and then the party responded by saying, quote, "Wait until you see what we tweet when the Clintons finally kick the bucket." Okay, so that's what we mean. And then, but whereas, and I'll say one more, and I'll let you talk, Adam. But then, so again, with that stuff, I understand the arguments about it, and anyway, we won't get bogged down in that, but just so people understand what we mean when we say, oh, they have a history of making provocative tweets. And then, though, the one in particular that is the subject of tonight's discussion, in 2024, the LP in New Hampshire wrote on X, quote, "Anyone who murders Kamala Harris would be an American hero." Okay, and then they later deleted it because it violated X's rules.
Right.
Okay, and so then, as people can imagine, people were outraged by that, and presumably that is why there was that tweet, which is why 2 federal agents soon thereafter showed up at Jeremy's door.
If only he'd let them talk a little bit more, we'd know for sure, right?
Right. Well, they wouldn't identify themselves. So.
They wouldn't identify. Yeah. I don't endorse any of those particular tweets. I don't think they should have made them, specifically not from an official party account. On the other hand, I mean, directionally, I agree with every point they made. You know, that's not the way I communicate. I think it's inartful. I think it's inelegant. I think, I mean, if there's such a thing as a dog whistle to, you know, to call racists, these sorts of things probably apply. I don't know, but I don't think they're wrong about any of it. And I'm not entirely sure if they're being bad persuaders. Because as I said in my article, step 1 to achieving persuasion is to get attention. If you're saying the most eloquent, persuasive things locked alone in your basement and no one can hear you, you've persuaded nobody. So there's something to be said for the fact that they get a lot of attention. You can also argue contrarily that maybe just getting nothing but negative attention and, you know, takes away from all the good they can achieve. And I don't know. I certainly would have liked to be on the editorial board of some of those tweets and make them a little, you know, I think you can be impactful without being just so awful. I don't know. And as far as the Kamala Harris quote, it's bad because it violates X's rules, as it should. I mean, it's not a direct call for violence, but it's close enough. But my biggest objection with that tweet is that it's not accurate. Anyone who assassinated Kamala Harris would not be an American hero because it would accomplish nothing. Kamala Harris is a puppet of the regime, indistinguishable from Joe Biden or anybody else that would just do the bidding of the people that, you know, basically control our government. So it's not even true that this action would be heroic. I think it would be mostly meaningless and probably negative even, because it would engender sympathy for the puppets that, you know, the mouthpieces of the regime and whatnot. So,
oh yeah, I absolutely. I mean, did you try to finish your train of thought?
No, that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I'm glad you clarified, because I think, Adam, you and I are in agreement that, I mean, certainly the child labor one, like I explicitly said, not only do I endorse the underlying motivation or principle at stake there, but I even am fine with them being provocative like that, you know,
right,
to get attention. That's, I think it's correct, or it's a good strategy, even though, yeah, it might anger people who like public schools or something, but that's like, okay, those people aren't going libertarian anyway.
And will anger people that think that, oh, you just want to put children down mine shafts or whatever. I mean, people who are reflexively capitalist or whatever, they're not
right.
You can't reach them anyway. But.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That the kind of person who's going to be so turned off by the the humor of that tweet that they're going to reject investigation into libertarian philosophy or economics or whatever, we don't have a chance of converting that person anyway.
Right.
Whereas, just to finish the train of thought, the other ones, if somebody's like, whoa, these guys are a-holes, or wow, these guys really do sound like they're actually racist. Like this isn't just, humor and port. I mean, if they're saying this kind of stuff, like they could have had Nina Turner doing all kinds of stuff that would have been equally
rather than
a violation of property.
Yes.
That seems like an oddly specific thing. And if she had been white, would they have said Hillary Clinton should pick cotton? I don't think
Probably
they would have
not.
said that.
Probably
right. So anyway, like when you try to unpack, like, why did they say that? Obviously it's because, oh, look, it's really, and that's the thing too, why it's to me almost annoying. Like I actually have more respect in a weird way for the actual people who come out and say things point blank rather than being real coy about it. No, I didn't say anything racist. I didn't say slavery was good. I just said, you know what I mean? Like the kind of plausible deniability. It's like trying to have your cake and eat it too. Anyway, go ahead.
I can't read anybody's mind, of course. I don't know what was in the person's mind when they made that picking cotton reference, but I have a hypothesis that it wasn't even that they were being coyly racist necessarily. I think they were being hurtful. And I think if you were to steel man that impulse, it's that we are being hurt every day by agents of the regime, including this woman. And so I want to hurt them back. And so I'm going to say the thing that I think is going to hurt them. It's not, it's not even necessarily the case, that they're racist. They're just trying to hurt that person. Like if she was fat, they would have said something about being fat. Or,
like if you're in a bar fight with some guy and he happened to be black, and you use the N-word, and later you could imagine someone getting mad. It's like, no, I wasn't a racist. I was just trying to say the thing that would, hurt him the most with my words. And I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't get in a bar fight, folks. I'm just saying, I actually could see the distinction you're making where you can say, no, it's not like I walk around thinking, one race is better than the other. I was just trying to come up with, what can I do to mess with this guy's head and bother him? That could be, but in any event, just to make sure no one's misunderstanding us, you and I are both in agreement that even though in those middle tweets, it was like, if you unpacked what was the underlying principle that they were trying to bring attention to, we would agree with that. With the Kamala Harris one, it's not just that I think like, oh yeah, we all know that, but dude, keep it quiet, man. No, I disagree quite strongly with that. I would go further. I mean, I know you were open to this, Adam, but I would say, to me, there's no doubt if somebody did that, it would make the Democrats clearly win the election. It wouldn't even be like, it would be a landslide.
Well, you saw the sympathy engendered by Trump from getting shot in the ear and, being heroically defiant and all that. Yeah, I think when people are attacked, it makes the broader public, sympathetic. So,
but I mean, you're right. But I'm saying even there, because I could imagine our critics saying, "Yeah, Trump's been, shot at twice now, or the second one, whatever you want to classify that as, and it's still a nail biter." So clearly, but it's different if it were Kamala Harris. I mean, there would be, like, that would forever be a day off from work. Would be the date that this happened. Like, just to make sure we all know how awful white people are. You know what I mean? So it would be the exact opposite of what Jeremy or whoever wrote that is thinking would have happened. And as you say, it's not even like, oh yeah, it's immoral in some abstract sense, but hey, we're at war, then strategically. No, it would whatever things you're worried about the deep state doing, it would bring that forward.
It would help the deep state and it would help the left in general. And the only question is whether it would be painted as more racist or more misogynistic. That would be the only question involved.
Yeah, and whatever weapon was used, that would be the one then that they would be rounding up, a month later, and say, and so the public's resistance to gun confiscation would be much lower in the wake of that, because it would just be nonstop. Every media outlet, nonstop, would be just talking about that.
I think that's right.
Actually happen.
And so, going back to Libertarian Party New Hampshire's X account, I do admire that they're trying to be edgy. I think they get it wrong a lot. But I do think there's value. Like, I do not care one whit for the social media accounts of the Libertarian Party affiliates that just play it safe. That just say taxation is theft and very little else. I don't think
what's funny is even that at one point was kind of a catchphrase meme. You know what I mean? Like, instead of just saying, I believe we should lower taxes because that will stimulate production. And it's actually are kind of right if you think about it. Like,
it's a good point. Yeah. So even when they get it wrong, I don't want to just throw Molotov cocktails at them because they get it wrong sometimes. I just want to point out that I think there's definitely some value in attracting attention to yourself, even when I think they do it wrong.
Yeah, so I will be as generous probably as I'm going to be on this. It's good if they're showing that, and kind of like if later comedians or musicians or somebody talk about their influences.
Right.
They get a big, and there's so and so, and maybe it's someone that is kind of obscure, but oh no, we really are songwriting. We learned from him or what, like that. Paul McCartney and John Lennon apparently used to watch Buddy Holly and just study him, like watch him and say, how is he making that sound with his good? What is he doing? That kind of stuff. I mean, people have heard of Buddy Holly, but the Beatles obviously were bigger. So I'm saying, yeah, if your point is, Adam, that like they're showing, hey, you can do a lot more than what people have been doing.
Right.
But again, then that's our role is to come in and, well, actually, and wave or tut our fingers or whatever and say, okay, but yeah, I don't think this is a flawless performance is what I'm getting at. So yeah, they're maybe showing what sorts of things are possible, but again, I don't agree with a lot of what they're doing. And it's not merely like, yeah, that's very effective, but ooh, I have qualms about that. It violates my morals. Like, no, I think what they're doing is counterproductive to the advancement of liberty.
It's interesting. God, I hope I don't drive this too far afield, but it's more than just like Thelonious Monk hitting a wrong key, trying to find an obscure key. I do think that I don't know who writes all the posts on that account, but I do think that you know who Phil Hellmuth is, right? The poker player.
No.
All right. Well, when poker got
he
big,
obviously has not tweeted enough provocative things to draw my attention to him. So
when poker got really big, because ESPN filmed it and made it prominent in 2003, some know-nothing accountant won, and all of a sudden a bunch of these poker players got famous, and Phil Hellmuth got real famous. One, because he plays poker very well, but two, because he's a complete he's very, very mean-spirited to his opponents at the table. He berates them, he cries, he criticizes, does everything you're not supposed to do. But because he's a winner, he'll justify after the fact, and his critics or his defenders will say, well, yeah, but what he's really doing is tactically sound. He's berating his opponents, and that'll make them emotionally unstable, and it'll make them play bad. I don't buy any of that. I think that Phil acts like that because he's a jerk and he can't help it. And he's rationalizing after the fact, trying to pretend like it's a tactic. And I think for a lot of the people who are writing tweets for this party, I think it's not just that they're missing the mark. I think some of them are they just want to be trolls, even if it's not the most effective way to communicate the message. So
yeah,
I don't think it's an accident that they miss. Like, they probably should have known that they shouldn't have picked, picking cotton as the thing that this person, shouldn't be compelled to provide for free because it's a violation of liberty. And, there are a lot of people that are responsible for America's murderous foreign wars. I don't really think you needed to, celebrate John McCain's death by tormenting his daughter. That probably wasn't anyway. The only reason I'm bringing it up is I think there's probably a reason they miss a little bit. It's because they want to be mean, And maybe there's a reason for that.
That is a good distinction you're drawing there. And I think you're right. It's like, because I remember when people were calling some of the Ron Paul newsletters racist.
Right.
And I would go through and I said something, I forget the exact, but it was, and I said, well, for a lot, it was like one of them was saying Martin Luther King, like it was calling him like a philanderer or something. And, and it was like, I said, well, that's not racist. You know what I mean? And there was another one, and I can't remember it now, but it was, what you said, I said, that's not really racist. That's just kind of mean. You know what I mean? Like it was not, and for people who don't know, like it was, Ron Paul didn't write that stuff. Like, he had some ghostwriters long ago. And then when his campaign got traction, all of a sudden, people are running stories on these old newsletters and whatnot. And people were calling it racist. And like you're saying, Adam, it was, I don't think a lot of what was held up as it actually wasn't. It was just kind of mean. And, you could tell that's not the style of Ron Paul's speeches and what was inspiring people. So that's why there's this huge disconnect. But yeah, I think you're right that with these things, it's more that, like, it's not coming from a place of calculated benevolence.
Right. And to give them, proper credit, I do think it's not wrong to want to be mean to some of these people. I just don't think it's really effective. I think it's a hard line to straddle, but I think you want to be just shocking enough to get attention, but not so mean-spirited that the vast bulk of the public that really is off-put by you being mean, just for the sake of being mean, isn't going to listen to you. Because that's more than just the people that, hate capitalism and hate freedom, and we're never going to listen to you anyway. There is this large reachable middle that is going to be turned off by you being mean when it seems pointless to do so.
Can I ask, just to go back to your poker analogy? So you said that, and I get why you went on that tangent, because it really illustrates what you're thinking about, what's in the head. Again, we don't know what's in their heads, but so you said you didn't think the guy was like, oh, I have nothing but respect and compassion for my fellow poker players, but hey, this is a game to win, and hate the game, not the player. And you're saying, no, you really do think.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
But my question then is does it also happen to be effective? Like, does it rattle the other player, or do you think, no, not only is it not conscious, but it's actually a bad, would he have more money right now if he didn't do that stuff?
It's theoretically effective. But in general, you're going to make more money in any poker game where people are happy and not thinking about trying to play good. And when we berate a specific aspect of somebody's play, what it makes them do is change up what they're doing, so they're even harder to read. So, like in theory, if you've got a guy who's just playing his A game, like the hustler, when Jackie Gleason goes and maybe it's a bad example. Yeah, it is a thing that if you were just playing against a machine and you could find a way to rattle him so he's not playing so perfectly anymore, yeah, okay, that's theoretically possible. But that's obviously not what Phil was doing. He can't control his emotions, and so he berates people because he's a jerk.
What's interesting is just the words that came out of your mouth. You said if you were playing against a machine, I mean, I know you meant a human, but even taken literally, then that's exactly where it wouldn't work.
Right.
No, somebody just has and to the extent that it would, I get what you're saying. Were you also saying there that suppose you did notice, like, geez, every time the hand is in this state, you make this bonehead play. Like, wouldn't you just keep that to yourself and realize, oh, I noticed this guy plays poorly under these circumstances.
Yes, you should.
Let's not bring that to his attention.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense the more you look into it. And yeah, I shouldn't have said machine. I should have said somebody who's in the zone, Like, let's say he's fat, but he's really in the zone. He's really concentrating well. His emotions are perfectly regulated. And maybe you stand up and say, hey, have another Twinkie there, fatty. Maybe that would rattle him and he wouldn't play so good anymore. That's the kind of argument that people who defend. Anyway, we're going far afield, but yeah, I don't think that's a profitable strategy. No, I think it's a rationalization.
Okay. And then even if it did make sense there, I think clearly that wouldn't carry over. It's not that the FBI was going to, raid Libertarian headquarters next week. And now they're just so mad that, they're kicking, waste baskets around and stuff in their office.
That's a good transition. Let's move on to the response of the Fibbies.
Yep.
So I'm going to assume everybody's seen this encounter. If not, do you play it, the whole encounter?
Yeah. So we'll link in this episode to the various stuff, folks. And yes, it's early. If you go to the Bob Murphy Show episode, I think it's like 54. Early on, like I'm talking within 6 minutes, I play the 3-minute encounter if you want to go see it.
So one of the comments you made about it is that you would not recommend that your child behave this way or anybody that you cared about because it's dangerous,
Right.
People who carry guns and badges can be violent and can hurt you and throw you in jail. And I agree for sure, but I also absolutely loved that encounter because Jeremy Kaufman was just a stud. He showed spine I would never show. I'm terrified of cops. I'm terrified of federal law enforcement. I'm a large man, and most cops are cowards, so they quickly rush to use force and at the drop of a hat. So I'm always yes sir, no sir. I wouldn't have done any of that, but I love what he did. It reminded me, excuse me, of those videos you used to see of people down by the border who are sick and tired of getting, a traffic stop for looking for illegals, and they don't want, they're sick of it. So they don't roll down their window. They shove their driver's license up to the window and refuse all the blah, blah, blah. And I love that people do that, but I never would. And occasionally they get their window busted and dragged out of the car and
Right.
get beaten half to death and thrown in jail. And so, yeah, I brought up your analysis that you wouldn't recommend that people do it, just to contrapose it with my own that I wouldn't either. But I love that Jeremy did that. I just loved it.
So again, since most of my contribution to this episode is going to be once again complaining about Jeremy, let me say, yeah, I was impressed just, in general, like the guy throwing a shoe at George W. Bush. I was just like, whoa, that's kind of ballsy, and so I was also impressed that Bush dodged it. I was like, oh,
that was quick reflexes.
He's limber. So yeah, I was surprised by when I first heard it, and I was like, whoa. And yeah, so he's brave for doing that. And so no one's taking that away from him. And it's just like as you say, my point was, if I would, and again, the only reason again I did that, I know I've said this a lot, but it was only because Dave Smith had him on, and they were saying how this was flawless and so forth. And that's why, say we couldn't have scripted it better was I think the exact phrase, Dave. And that's was like, whoa, if that's possibly how this is now circulating, let me make sure I get in and complain and ruin the party. That was the issue, that it was. So I suppose on that, what do we? Oh, the other thing you said too was just the danger involved. That it's we have videos all the time now going on of cops overreacting in a situation. So we know now, ex post, this one was okay and it worked and everything. But I'm just saying, in general, guys with guns show up to your house and do you want to? Now, in fairness, Jeremy, he didn't really start mocking them until they were walking away. So you can take that either way. You can say like, oh, so he's kicking them while they're down. Why is that brave? But also, he wasn't stupid. Like right in the beginning, he says, "Can I have your name, your full name, please?" Like he is being, yes, officer. No, why did you pull me over?
He's sticking to the safe spot.
And then so he was saying please and stuff. It was only at the end. So you could say partly maybe too what's going on there is once he knew, okay, they're driving away, that's when he amped it up, that he's not stupid and he didn't start swearing at him and calling him effing cowards when the guy first walked up.
No, but he did say absolutely not. You had to love that.
Yep.
I suspect this is a point of conflict between you and I. You didn't like when he started swearing and started being mean, belittling them as they left, because like, if I remember correctly, you said, not only is it rude, for whatever that's worth, but I think you were saying that it's less persuasive an encounter because he was being a jerk at the end of it or something like that. Is that
right? Yeah. So I was saying, it wasn't so much the rudeness per se. It was, I thought it was risky. Like, those guys might do something down the road because he did that, whereas they might not have,
And also, this game is still, we're only in the first quarter.
Yeah,
it's only round one. Anything could happen.
Yeah. So there's that element, but then I was saying, to the extent that we would now want to be able to circulate this to the mass, or even just among other libertarians, just as like a, to get esprit de corps and, hey guys, we had a victory. Look at this and keep up the fight, or look at, this is what you can do. Like, make sure you research and know the laws in your state and because look at, if they know that they can't, they're going to walk away. All that's, I'm saying that stuff at the end made it more difficult, and just the members of the general public who might have been with him up to that point, they might be, oh, he didn't need to do that. Why, geez. And then if my, subsequent, but we don't need to dwell on those. And then if they happen to go read more about the case and learn about it, then I think they would be even more turned off. Like, oh yeah, this guy. So anyway,
I totally take your point, and I'm not dismissing it in any way. I'm just saying there's more to the equation to consider.
So and that's, go ahead. So here's now, folks, where we're really getting into the conflict. Folks, let's take a break from the action for this special announcement. Time is running out, and I mean that in two senses. First, look at the world. Things are spiraling out of control. Your time to prepare for this is running short. The second sense is your time to get ready for the Expat Money Summit is also running short, because it occurs on October 7th through 11th. So hurry up and get ready for it. What is the Expat Money Summit, you say? It's the world's largest offshore event. It's put on by Mikkel Thorpe, host of the Expat Money Show. So this, to be clear, is entirely online. Again, October 7th through 11th. If you attend the seminar, you're going to see why international diversification is a must for those looking to preserve their liberty and wealth. You're going to learn everything you need to know about getting your Plan B up and running, such as acquiring a second passport, diversifying your finances offshore, investing in international real estate. And you're going to get in-depth insights on geopolitics from world-renowned experts. These include people like Ron Paul, Doug Casey, Scott Horton, Tom Woods, Mark Faber, and Tom Luongo. Now, I'm going to be participating as well. I'm on a VIP panel devoted to the topic of de-dollarization and, the pace with which we might expect that and some of the complications arising from it and ways that we think it may play out. To get your complimentary ticket, just go to expatmoneysummit.com. However, if you want to have access to the VIP panels, which includes me, you're going to have to go ahead and get the VIP pass. If you do so, make sure you use promo code Murphy to get a special discount. So again, the general event, it's free. Go to expatmoneysummit.com. But if you want to get the VIP pass, make sure you use promo code Murphy. Let's get back to the show.
The big one is I don't think that goes anywhere near as viral if he wasn't mean at the last 20 seconds there.
Right.
And virality is viral, whatever. Catchiness is the most important thing if you're trying to attract attention and persuade people. Again, you got to get their attention first. And so I don't know how to do the calculus, but I would say that for whatever X percent of people that are turned off at the very end, it more than gets made up for by the fact that more eyeballs saw it to begin with. And I can't prove that, but it's something you've got to consider. And maybe there's smarter ways to be spicy and get the thing to go viral. But I don't know, maybe there isn't. All I insist is that you do have to consider both sides of that.
Yes. If you don't mind, let's put to the side that one, because I think we're closer. Even if I argued with you, I think we are just disagreeing about magnitudes. And,
right.
It's okay. Fair.
Right.
I agree that the more bland it is, the less exciting it is. And so it doesn't go around as much. And that to the extent that I do think there was information in that, like to show, because I wouldn't know, it wouldn't occur to me to take my phone. I'll give you an example. I was at, in an airport, I think it was either JFK or LaGuardia. I was coming back from an airport, and the customs pulled me aside, and I'm sitting there, and some kid that was like 19 just started like saying, no, what did I do, man? What did I do? I'm leaving. No, I'm leaving. And you could hear the armed, the TSA guy. No, they weren't. Were they cops? I think they were actually just cops. And they were like, no, hey, son, stop walking. And the kid just started walking away. We're like in the cordon off customs area. We're not like out in the main airport. And he just like is basically saying, no, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm leaving. And they all just tackled him and everything. And I was, when I saw this developing, I was considering, should I take my phone out? And I decided not to, because I didn't know what the rules were. And I was like, you know what? I might be here for 5 hours if I take my phone out right now. And, there's a bunch of witnesses. I don't think they're going to actually like break the kid's arm in front of all of us. And so I didn't. But it was partly because I didn't really know my standing in that situation. So I agree that him saying not just, no, I'm going to keep recording, but said, no, it's my First Amendment. I mean, he could have been bluffing, and maybe the FBI guys wouldn't have known. What I mean? But he was just with such confidence saying, absolutely not, like you say, no, I'm going to keep recording this because it's my right and so forth. Like that was good. So to get that to go up. But what I'm more confident about, though, to quibble about getting that video out and being provocative at the end, and that gets more eyeballs on it, is I think you were also arguing in your article that taken as a package, then the fact that they made that really provocative tweet about Kamala Harris, and then that's what made the FBI show up, and then that opened the door for, the heroic encounter. And so, hey, even if you disagree with that, that's the part where I disagree with, because I was saying other things equal, it would be better if that original tweet had been something more correct in terms of our principles. And so if you say, well, if they hadn't made that, then the FBI wouldn't have shown up. And I say, okay, good. So then that means the FBI is not harassing us. So the point is, at some point, the deep state is going to start showing up to intimidate us. I'm saying wait until the thing we do that invites them to our doorstep is something that's would resonate more with the public. And I think any way you try to argue against that by saying, well, no, if we didn't do this spicy tweet, they just never would have come. Oh, okay, good. So they're not bothering us yet then. Like we just pushed it back.
I'm very sympathetic to that point, and that's probably the way I act. But I'm going to defend what they did. And I'm going to use the phrase I think you used in your episode was that antics like what Jeremy Kaufman did and that tweet pull forward the date that we all get shipped off to gulags. I don't think you said gulags, but it brings the attention of the coercive state in a negative way, which pulls forward the date that they actually do pull out the billy clubs and crack skulls. And I thought that was an interesting phrasing because just implicit in the language is an assumption that that date is coming and we are just going to lose. And I think you can certainly make an argument that being provocative, making the inelegant tweet, perhaps even, violating terms of service and attracting the attention of these feds. If you're in a losing situation, maybe you have to shake the box rather than just meekly waiting for the date that we do get thrown into a gulag. And maybe there's an argument to be made that in order to get ourselves off this bad trajectory, you have to employ a high risk strategy rather than just sitting around and saying taxation is theft. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that they're right either. I'm saying that it's a valid possible strategy that we should think about.
Okay. Yeah. This is great. So let me just recapitulate the argument really fast just so the viewers get what you're saying. And then, that's an interesting observation you made. And you're right. That is part of my framework that I didn't spell out. And maybe that's a disagreement. And I could see why someone would think the way I'm viewing it is wrong. So real quickly, folks, I was saying that I think, and I've heard people make this argument to say, we're being intentionally, quote, outrageous and racist and anti-Semitic or whatever it may be, because that expands the Overton window. And so therefore we're pinning down the government's having to fight, people, way far away from the core beliefs to leave the field open, Bob, for guys like you or for Dave Smith or whoever, who now in comparison to us seem quite reasonable. And so we're giving you the ground. And I was saying, no, I think that's, for one thing, we get linked to you guys then, right? So it's easier to just dismiss me and say, oh yeah, that's the only reason you're making an argument is because you're appealing to racists and anti-Semites and you want to get rid of the Fed because you don't like Jewish people. And now it's harder for me to go, oh, come on, that's absurd, because they can go quote people all day saying that on Twitter.
You are right.
In their
it is
Twitter
harder.
bio,
Yep.
calling themselves libertarian or whatever. So I mean, it's now at the point where I can't just say, oh, come on, give me a break. I have to say, yeah, I don't agree with those guys, even though they might have bought my books, right? So it makes it harder for me to distance myself. And so to be clear, if people are saying, no, Bob, I'm going to say what I want, I don't care what it does to your career, that's fine. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying I've seen people defend these tactics by saying, we're doing you a favor, Bob, we're taking one for the team.
Yeah, I don't agree with that framing, by the way. I'm making a different argument. I don't think it's right that they're out there on the fields and taking the bullets so people are going to go read Choice by Robert P. Murphy. I don't think they're thinking that way. I think much like Phil Hellmuth, they are mad at the regime and they want to be jerks, and so they're In fairness, I mean, I haven't heard necessarily Jeremy Kaufman saying this, but I got into an argument with Ian Freeman 10 years ago or something when I don't know if you remember this ad. Yeah, I remember that guy. And I hated what they did with the parking meter lady or whatever they were doing.
Yeah, right. So anyway, and he explicitly said to me, the thing there, folks, was that they were on camera, like they were harassing some crossing guard or something that was a grandma. And well, she was elderly. I don't know if she was a grandma. And she was mad and kind of hit one of the kids' arms with this sign. And he went, oh! And then they had that proudly posted as it says, and I was arguing with Ian, what, you guys are being cool by showing how some old lady's oppressing you? There's a crossing guard? It's not even like she works for the IRS.
Yeah, I hate everything about that.
No, Bob, aggression is aggression. And so it's okay if at what age can a woman violate your property right? He was doing that. And then he also said, this gets us attention. And more people move to New Hampshire. And this gets, more people come see us and they think this is hilarious and they want to be part of this community.
I hate everything about that. Okay, it offends me just the way it does you. I know, I'm making a different argument. I'm not making Ian Freeman's argument.
Yep.
I'm just saying that there's something to be said for if you're losing, changing the rules of the game. I think there's something to that. And I'm certainly not saying that everything LP and H is doing is correct. I just think that I think we need to expand our option set a little bit in evaluating this.
Yeah,
because
let me
go ahead.
So in response to all that, I was arguing that no, far from keeping them at bay, you're giving them the precedent. So if the FBI ever does want to get to the point where they can just show up and say, hey, don't tweet like that anymore, and people, okay, they'd clearly like to be able to do that without any regard to the Constitution or anything. And I'm saying far from the LP by pushing the envelope, the LP in New Hampshire pushing the envelope, keep that they're setting the precedent. So now the public sees, oh, if you say someone would be heroic to take out Kamala Harris, the FBI shows up, a lot of Americans are going to think, okay, that doesn't shock me as being unconstitutional. Like, they shouldn't have said that. That's kind of crazy. Okay, and then that warms people up. So then if they show up because you just say, hey, I wonder who else was on the Epstein list, and they want to just discourage people from talking like that, and so it warms the public. So that was my point. But you're right, Adam. I'm praising you here that I was saying that pulls forward when it happens. I wasn't saying it may never happen if you do my strategy. Like, my analysis was kind of taking it for granted that at some point we are going to be living in a complete police state with drones and whatever. And so let me just be frank. I do agree with that. And so that probably does drive. So that's why I wrote for the secession of Texas and whatever. Like, to me, I just decided the U.S. is hopeless. There's no way if we just educate enough people and vote harder and blah, 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 we can turn this around. I don't think that's possible. So I think the prospects for liberty are states breaking away, whether literally or just de facto. And so yes, if the LP New Hampshire people are thinking, no, Bob, that's defeatist, we think we can shock people and wake enough people up to make enough resistance that we keep them at bay indefinitely.
Well,
that's not the way I'm looking at it. So
the one thing supports the other. Mm-hmm. Like, if you make a viral video making the feds look like jerks and supporting, the freedom of being able to say whatever you want. I mean, it's not just making the feds look horrible in the eyes of more and more and more people so that they mock them and hate them and don't want to respect them. That accelerates a secessionist movement wherever it breaks out too, right? It's not like the only path is to reform the U.S. government. We can also just make people at a cultural level not respect the agents of the state, and that helps it helps nullification, it helps secession, it helps all sorts of good things. Voting for better politicians even.
Well, can I just stop you though? Just like you noticed the turn of phrase I used, what you just said there, you said something that makes the agents of the state look horrible or ridiculous or something like that. And I want to say, I forget your exact wording, but that's kind of my point, is I think Jeremy could have handled the encounter a bit differently, that would have had more of that. Like, in other words, I think a lot of people watching that did not conclude. If my mom saw that video, she wouldn't say, I can't believe those awful FBI agents showed up. I'm glad he put them in their place. No, she would say, what was the tweet, Bob? And then if I told her, she'd go, what? Well, yeah, I can see why they showed up. And then he just starts swearing. Like, they were being perfectly nice to him. The guy said his name. You see what I'm saying? Whereas if he had drawn
I totally do.
And had a debate with them on camera and made them come off as stuttering fools before, well, this, then they just left. I think that would be different. That would be perceived differently. And he could have humiliated them, but by trapping them and just showing they couldn't argue, as opposed to them just saying, okay, have a nice day, sir, and leaving.
No, I totally get it. And in fact, that brings up the language that Dave used when he said it's perfectly scripted, couldn't possibly get any better, which prompted you to make your episode of your show in the first place. And I agree. If we were scripting it, we certainly would want to, do a better job of making sure that we're appealing to the most people while still being edgy, while still putting them in their place. But I think, poor Jeremy's, got his heart's pumping a mile a minute, and he's got adrenaline coming through his veins, and oh my God, it won, they're leaving. And,
yes.
I forgive him for showing a little emotion.
Yeah, I would say this too, like, when you go watch a debate between two people, and then you're saying, like, the guy you won, and you're I always try to say that at the beginning, like, in the heat of the moment or whatever, you're doing this, and so none of this is to be saying, like, oh, if I were there, I would have done it better. Like, just to say, as we're analyzing this, what could have been done better. That's the spirit of this. And it's your wife and kid are in the house, and guys with guns show up in broad day. Like, that'd be very scary.
Horrifying. Ruby Ridge, Waco.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess again, just to reiterate, I do think that the iron or curtain is falling, and that we're going to have complete surveillance state, drones flying everywhere, and some kind of social credit thing where, again, it's what they do in China. It's interesting. I'll be real fast here. I don't want to hog this at him, but I saw some guy come give a presentation on this when I was at Texas Tech. So like a real an analysis of like the legality of it and how they do it. It's like technically you couldn't in China criticize the government, and it's not like the government is going to take legal action against you. It's more that depending on the hierarchy and the severity of what it is that you do with your criticism, you might not be able to get a hotel room or rent a car. And the way that happens is, so you got your social credit score that gets dinged because you made that public post criticizing the government. And then the reason, it's not that the government even says to the hotel and the car rental, you better not let someone use your service or product if his social credit score blows, or else armed agents of the state will come and hurt you. It's rather the hotel's social credit rating gets dinged if they rent to somebody who criticizes it. You see what I mean? So it's like a hierarchical thing where it's all nominally voluntary market transactions, and the coercion of the government only comes in at certain key choke points to keep the whole thing in line, right? So it's a clever, so same thing here where, yeah, like the government could just lean on Twitter and Facebook during COVID.
Yep, exactly.
Just lightly, and then get them to do stuff that, hey, that's terms of service. They can, they can do whatever they want with their posts. It's private property, right? So that's kind of the system, and that's the danger, of course, with all the consolidation, given the existence of the state, is that there's fewer decision makers that the state has to directly threaten to kind of get the result they want. That's nominally based on market voluntary exchanges.
No, it's all intertwined and poisonous and awful. It calls to mind what a collapsitarian is, presumably.
Yep.
I am not one. I'm not sure how the folks up in New Hampshire think, but I'm wondering what you think about that general philosophy. If you think that the gulags and the drones and it's all coming anyway, do you think there's any reason to want to accelerate it? There could be arguments to be made that the faster it comes, the faster the healing can begin, and the less resources will be destroyed. And I don't know. What do you think about collapsitarianism?
No, I disagree that you should try to bring it forward. I mean, that's kind of the flip side of what I was saying.
I agree.
And yeah, for a couple of reasons. So for one thing, it's just quality of life, and that's why would you do that? And also you don't know exactly, the future's uncertain.
Right.
So it's not obvious. And then also too, given, like, I think, for example, the U.S. empire we're watching the collapse of it. And maybe it drags out 50 years, or maybe it drags out 8 years. Who knows? In terms of like future historians marking the decline of it and so forth. But I think I believe, it would be better once you get through it. But also how bad it gets during the transition, I don't think is locked in stone either.
I completely agree. That's why I'm not a collapsitarian. It implies a knowledge of the future that's unknowable. We don't know how bad it's going to get, and we don't know if maybe secession and nullification just takes off because of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I only brought up to say that even though I think it's rational for Jeremy Kauffman and those others to talk about, I'm putting words in their mouth, but I said maybe shake the box if you're in a losing situation. I'm not implying that we should embrace collapsitarianism. I'm just saying that sometimes you need a radical strategy to get yourself, David took down Goliath with a slingshot. It's not exactly the sword and shield. So
this is a good springboard. I had jotted some notes down beforehand of things I want to make sure I hit on this. I wanted to ask your opinion, Adam, to draw an analogy. It's like with the people stopping traffic because they're concerned about what's going on over Israel and Gaza. And so on the one hand, I get where they're coming from. Like we can put aside whether the listener agrees with this view or not, but there are people who genuinely believe the Israeli government is committing genocide, or let's say ethnic cleansing is a broader meaning. If you stay here, you're dead. Get the heck out. And that's what and that's what the Israeli aims are, is to just take that over. This is all a big farce. They're not, that's what a lot of people genuinely believe. And they think we have tried protesting. We've tried, writing letters to the editor. We've tried calling our representatives. Nothing is working. We need to bring public attention to this cause. And that's why we're blocking traffic. And hey, if some kid needs to get to the hospital and he dies because we block traffic, you know how many kids are dying in Gaza every day because of U.S. taxpayer, right? So I get what their point is, but I'm saying I don't even need to get into and see is their value system right, because I don't think that it's a good strategy. Saying you are not helping your cause by doing that.
That's a brilliant point. I completely agree. The people who stand in traffic and block it, and the people who glue their hands to the Mona Lisa or throw paint or whatever. Yep. I don't care what they're advocating for. I'm against them. So if you're making the analogy that, what Jeremy Kauffman is doing is kind of like that, I totally get the argument. I'm just saying that I don't know if they're over the line yet. They're definitely not over the line all the time. And I think it's a line that you need to get close to and try not to step over.
Yep. I agree. I suppose, it would be better if we could do publicity stunts that were amazing things like, hey, look, everyone, cold fusion. And by the way, taxation's theft. Google
we just got to get David Blaine to put up the right posters inside his little cubicle or whatever he's doing this week.
Yep. So in any event, and with all this stuff too, like go out and, be a great movie script writer and be a great musician and and this is how we win. Right. So I get that, but yes, to the extent of doing provocative tweets. So anyway, I would just encourage the listener, if you agree with me in I can't stand these people blocking traffic, get out of here, tree hugger. What are you doing? That, okay, then why is it that, and the difference can't be, because libertarianism is right and, these climate activists are wrong.
No, that doesn't track.
Yeah. I mean, you think that in your head, but still in terms of persuading the
persuasion
public,
is still, exactly. Hey, let me ask you a question before we're getting kind of late here, but do you think we have reason for optimism that our star, broadly speaking, libertarian political philosophy and the less reliance on governments, do you think we're gaining an influence in a way that should make us feel, somewhat hopeful about our chances, even though it does also seem that things are getting worse objectively, with 35 trillion in debt and, a government that just keeps finding new ways to want to oppress us. It also does seem like that's opening people's eyes to our message if we can get their attention. Do you think we should be optimistic about that, or do you think it's just all sliding into chaos?
I think so. That yes, there, and this again is kind of my nuanced worldview in terms of optimism and pessimism. That I think it's going to be like the Matrix, that world, that where a lot of the people are under the control of the elites, but also the ability of certain people to break away and to kind of live independently of that system is also going to be enhanced. And I think you're going to see both trends at the same time, that people over time, we now have our parallel systems to be able to deliver, financial transactions, communications, all that other stuff. It's going to be easier just for even little communes to develop that make their own power and grow their own food and whatever. So I think you're going to see that, but increasing centralization for, quote, the masses. And so, I'm hopeful. I mean, our ideas are breaking through. Like it's amazing the platform Dave Smith has.
Right.
And, I think we kind of take that for granted, or just that, famous people now regularly refer to him or to Michael Malice or something.
And Tucker Carlson. Go ahead. Tucker Carlson, and talking to Glenn Greenwald and Dave Smith and Candace Owens and Eric and Brett Weinstein. I mean, there's a lot of Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian Party, was on a Twitter Spaces twice within the last week talking to Jordan Peterson. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of amazing that a lot of smart people are A, communicating, and B, rubbing off on one another. And I think people are moving in our direction.
That's
not going the other way. Yeah.
And I think, like, if I had to pick one single person that's not, is Dave Smith.
Yeah.
Has made libertarian cool.
Yeah.
I paused there because I wasn't sure if I wanted to say libertarians or libertarianism, but let's say libertarianism, because there's a lot of libertarians that aren't cool. So anyway, whereas that, I don't think that would have, it was nerdier. Like even when Ron Paul was big,
Sure.
it was still kind of nerdy, whereas Dave actually made it cool I think more than any other single person. And so, and that can't be the importance and significance of that cannot be understated. And so, and I mentioned Malice, and I can imagine some people thinking he's also a borderline, you know what I mean? Like, I disagree with a lot of his tweets, and I think they're just mean, to be frank, to put a simple word. But on the other hand, I do see he wouldn't be as popular if he didn't do those ones.
Yeah, he's a great example of what I'm talking about. I mean, he pissed me off too when Ron Paul had a stroke and he, said he was doing a Joe Biden impression or whatever,
I think it was on my radar.
I think he goes over the line, but he also attracts an amazing amount of attention. He's very smart and he's very effective. So it just goes to show, I don't think you can be too mad when people take a foot on the wrong side of the line, because they're right where they're supposed to be. And it's hard to stay in exactly the right position on that map.
And also, I'll say with Malice, his tweets are funny.
They're hilarious.
Even the ones that he says that I think I can't shoot. It was which Weinstein is it? The math guy that worked with
Eric.
Is that Eric?
Eric.
He was on this kid named Andrew something. The young guy that's real fit.
Yeah, I forget his name too, but yeah.
So he was on his show. It was a great discussion. Like, I was very pleasantly surprised on both ends. And then I think it was in that discussion that Malice came up somehow, and and Weinstein was trying to make the point about, and then this situation, and he said this, and I was just eating my lunch or something. I was like, I could understand why he was saying, I couldn't believe it. But at the other hand, it was like, whereas the LPNH ones, it's like I said, they're not even particularly, like, certainly a Kamala Harris one. It wasn't a joke. It was just kind of, hey, look at me, everybody. I'm naughty. So.
Yeah, it's a different ethos, and I think Michael Malice's is much more effective. It's much more my style. So yeah, we're in agreement there. I wish those guys in New Hampshire weren't. I understand being enraged at the filthy, horrible, murderous, thieving state who orders us around and makes our lives miserable, but I don't think it's that effective to be so caustic in your tweeting.
Yeah, if I could make a quick marketing analogy, because this came up, I was involved for a while with a group of guys that we were selling, and women, selling a particular type of life insurance product that had to be designed a certain way in order to be fully effective. And there was a lot of like analogies or marketing hooks people would use to try to get the public to take interest in this product. And some of them I thought were great, and other ones I thought, no, you shouldn't be selling it this way. And I tried to get this across to them by saying, and even for like an outfit where they were cranking out policies with this marketing, so they could say, well, what are you talking about, Bob? It works. And I was trying to get them to see, okay, but what's happening is there's thousands and thousands of potential people that might want this thing if it were explained in the right way. You've got your marketing funnels out there, and you have 100 people go through, and you annoy 90 of them. You really anger 5, and then 5 are intrigued, and 3 end up buying. And then so given that that's your strategy, you just say, I just got to get, cast the net as widely as possible and reach as many people as possible. And that 3% that convert and buy, that's boom. And I was saying, but you're missing
make a better funnel. Yeah.
The 90 that you're turning out. Now you've just poisoned the well, if that's the right word to use or principle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now nobody can sell to those people. Whereas if you did something that, had a conversion rate of 2%, but the others just, okay, yeah, I'll kick the tires, and it didn't close them and they walked away. But now there's still potential, and maybe somebody else in our network can catch them, from a different approach. And that's what I was trying to say. So if what we're trying to do as a group is get as many people in the public to see the merit of designing policies this way as we want, or as possible, us behaving in a certain way, even though it might be not maximizing, your closure rate in the next month, over the next 10 years, the group's efforts, that was kind of what I was getting. So here too, I'm saying it makes it harder for me to hand my book choice to somebody, say, hey, you should see the insights of Ludwig von Mises, if they think, oh yeah, the Austrians, I know what they're about. I see how they are on Twitter. And it's, it tends to be a bunch of people talking about a certain people who run banks. Right. And so anyway, again, I'm not saying, hey guys, this is making my job harder, so stop it. I'm saying, if you think we're all doing this and, this is our strategy and we're playing our role and you guys are doing your thing and teaching the econ and we're getting the And I'm saying, no, it's actually hurting some of the different departments of this enterprise are hurting the sales of the other departments. Something like that, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
No, I definitely get your point. And if we're trying to make this little conversation you and I are having like useful to people who run Twitter accounts and like how to behave in the future, I'm not sure how to distill all this into advice, but I think part of it is be funny. Another part of it is just be mindful of what you're communicating and to try and be intriguing and edgy without, as you say, poisoning the well to a vast majority of the public. Although I do think it's okay to piss off the people that are unreachable, you know, whatever Kamala Harris is and Paul Krugman is, you know, I don't care if you alienate those people, but
yeah, right. And that, I'm glad. So I'm in total agreement with your takeaway points there. And yeah, just to elaborate on that last one, that I think that's, so it's true. Maybe one big difference between my view and some of the New Hampshire guys is they think there's a chance that in 20 years from now, the U.S. will still be relatively free, whereas I don't think that's possible at this point. But another difference is I think they believe that, there is just this solid core of people who might, you know, that they like reason and evidence and they're rational thinkers. And those are the ones we're appealing to. And that's a very small percentage of the population. So we can go ahead and be obnoxious because who cares? And I think that that's a bit too glib, that I think there is a larger envelope of people that would respond if you don't completely turn them off. And so in that sense, I'm more optimistic than they are, that I think there is a range of people that.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's actually, I mean, I can't speak for Jeremy Kauffman, but I think I've heard him say on other platforms that he literally doesn't care if he were to alienate 95% of the people in order to attract the 5 people that he wants, specifically to New Hampshire. I think he's fine letting the rest of the world just fall to pieces, or he just doesn't care. You know, he doesn't want those kind of people coming to New Hampshire anyway, so the heck with
right
it.
And so just on that, that doesn't surprise me that he said that, because that's how he's behaving,
right.
And that's consistent too with what I said. You know, Ian was telling me when I was saying, what's up with you posting this thing about you guys picking a fight with by the way, I don't know that Ian was in the video with the crossing guard, but he certainly was cool with the video. So I would just say, okay, but then that means, number one, the kind of people you attract are potentially different. I mean, I know lots of people that went to the Free State and they left and they didn't like it. And so if you're attracting people who like the edgy tweets or whatever, it's conceivable that that's, you know, not the way you're going to maximize how many people long-term are going to move there. And then also, if in so doing, so yeah, you appeal to people that the general public thinks are racist, sexist, blah, blah, blah. And then they all move to New Hampshire. Like, the rest of the country hates their gut. If the government is so evil and these are a bunch of totalitarian monsters, is that really the right thing? Let's piss everybody off, and then we'll all go move in this one spot.
I was just about to make that exact point. It's like your marketing funnel. You know, you've pissed off 90% of the people. What if you piss off 90% of the people that live not in New Hampshire, and you've made them believe that you are literally the next coming of Hitler? Well, they're going to nuke you from orbit. That's a terrible strategy. Can't you instead attract only 2% of the people and leave the rest of them indifferent to you? That seems like it's a lot more tactically sound.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, but yeah, I think the big takeaway is be funny.
Be funny.
Just like, I mean, and it's true, right? Like, it goes back to like the jester could say things to the king that nobody else could.
Yeah.
You know, George Carlin had some fairly misanthropic, really reprehensible opinions he expressed amidst the other ones that I agree with. But because he was funny, like a lot of, I let it go. Whereas if it was just some guy getting up there and just talking about, you know, I wish half the world's population would die because they're all useless, I might think, that's not a guy I want to keep listening to.
Well, I mean, you just said the guy who made libertarianism cool and is our most effective messenger is a comedian. I mean, that's not an accident. So yeah, by all means, be funny. This has been great, Bob. I hope we do more of these crossover episodes. I'm always come away smarter from having sharpened my steel against yours, and this was great. Yeah,
this was fun, and I'm glad we got to do it. And I think I actually understood my own position better after talking to you. So good stuff. I'm
here to help.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I guess both of us will see you next time.
Yep.
You've just experienced another episode of The Bob Murphy Show. the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. For more information and to subscribe to this podcast, visit bobmurphyshow.com.